Good afternoon, Aristo. Good to see you today.
Good morning, Ron. It's good to see you too. I'm glad to be here.
Do you have a specific title for today, or are we just going to wing it?
Well, I came here with one wing, and I tried to grab another one, and basically accumulated every single thing I've thought about this whole week, hoping that something would come out. But as we had our preliminary, greetings and discussion before, something did coalesce. So let's see if I can put it into a topic title, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Go for it.
How to condense this? Well, from knowledge to action, and everything in between.
Okay, I'm writing that down. And everything in between makes it long, but that's okay.
Or, you can say from knowledge and then 3 dots to action. But that might be a little vague.
All right, we'll work on it. I'm writing down what you have, and if I have to make adjustments as we go on, we'll make adjustments. It's okay.
Okay. As we've bandied about in the pre-video conversation, the difficulty in for people especially who are into your own Facebook page, I'm not saying everybody's spiritual or new agey or whatever, but they're introspective people. They're thoughtful people. And people who are into alternative media because they're thoughtful, because they can't just buy into and take for granted what they're told. That's why there are debates and discussions and arguments. That's why it seems nobody's on the same page, because we are all trying to work it out. This is a natural effect and something good. I would be very suspicious and probably not making these videos and not posting on your Facebook page if everybody just got along and said the same thing off the bat. That's the definition of a cult, So, I think this is a good thing, and it represents a process. So even if somebody like Karen Huda said, no, it's going to happen immediately or whatever, that's fine. That's one thing. But I'm speaking of the actual process of the people. For it to happen smoothly, the people, or even small groups of people, need to evolve a natural process of bringing all of these things that we're being confronted with in and digesting them so they can naturally take them from raw information or something somebody gives you into a context of being able to act, being able to do. And there are some natural stages here that wise people over the ages have noticed and have described. And I'd like to get a little bit into that today. The problem with spiritual people is that it's not a problem. It's actually the talent of spiritual people or the strength. And that is that they are idealistic. They have a sense of how things should be. What they don't have, for the most part, is how to ground and bring those things about, how to make them real, how to actualize them. This is because, for a long time, individuals and collectively, we seek the ideal. We need to understand what we want, what the best world would be, what the best ideal would be, what the best society would be. These things take time to really comprehend. They not just comprehend, but to feel into that. So you, like the sage who's on top of the mountain, you basically step back from what the world throws at you, or at least a part of you steps back in order to formulate this ideal, to come to some kind of conclusion. Then you have this ideal and you step forth into the world and you find, oh my God, I forgot how to, be a normal sleeping human being. Because the thing is, it's not enough to be awake. You have to be comfortable in the sleeping mentality without sleeping, and comfortable in the wakefulness of your own ideal at the same time. You have to bring the rubber and the road together, and you have to regulate the speed of your vehicle, so to speak, and the navigation of it, so you can minimize the friction. You don't want to burn out your tires, and you don't want to skid off the road, to stretch out the analogy a little bit. So the process can be frustrating. I mean, before you get into a process of actually how things are going to mechanically operate in the world, there's also a process of how am I going to stand up? How am I going to realize my passion? How am I going to apply that passion? So, yes.
I've got a new title for today's talk. From idealism to practicality.
And that's the marriage of idealism and pragmatism, whatever. That's why I had suggested before, let's put the title at the end of the video. You choose the right one, but you're getting the point of what the topic is at this point. So, to cut a long story short, whenever we come into an ideal, that is knowledge, because knowledge essentially, in the biblical sense, means contact. So there's carnal knowledge. It means being in intimacy with something, be it an idea, a person, a physical object. It is perceiving it, basically, with the five senses and beyond the five senses. But it's almost like having a plate of food in front of you. So knowledge basically would be choosing what morsel you want to pick, and then putting it in your mouth and getting that first taste. But understanding follows knowledge, and understanding means chewing your food, swallowing it, and making sure it's not vomited or that doesn't give you a stomach ache or it's not poisonous. You make choices of your food, not just once you taste it, but after you start chewing it, you say, ooh, this is really good, or yuck, or I have to swallow this. It may not taste good, but, at least it's healthy. It's good for me, or whatever. So understanding is very similar to this, and it takes time. But when we face something that's very difficult, it's unpalatable, so to speak, something that creates cognitive and emotional dissonance, understanding is far more difficult. So we try to keep something at a distance. And sometimes our spiritual ideal, basically the way the food looks, oh, this looks really good. Once you taste it, however, there's a whole different impression of it. So actually bringing it in and making it a part of yourself is understanding. It's assimilating the information, the ideal, but when you assimilate it, you also assimilate its relationship to the world, because you exist in the world. You have to, in order for knowledge to become part of you, to become one with you, so you can actually act upon it, knowledge also needs to become part of the world. So you have to come into relationship of what the world is without creating a gap between your ideal and the world with which the ideal is going to benefit. And in fact, the world is not going to be pleasant, or else you wouldn't need the ideal in the first place.
Sure not.
and it seems that at least at an emotional level, spiritually minded people, they may get that mentally, but once they get the experience of how the world is really, well, this isn't my ideal. I mean, many spiritual people, in my experience, talk as if the world really is an expression of their ideal already, and all they have to do is tell people of, oh, there it is, it's there already, let's just, do it. And it's like, no, it doesn't really work that way. There's a lot more to it. And so when I didn't think it was going to be that unpleasant or that difficult. You see, ideals are also like opiates. Just like religion is the opiate of the people and all of this, your own personal ideal can actually act. I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's actually meant to happen in order for you to be able to focus on the ideal and really build it up and have it ready to present to the world. So focusing on the ideal makes you forget your pain in the world. It makes you forget how bad the world is. And if you keep doing it, you can atrophy your own empathy without realizing it. You can have theoretical empathy. A lot of spiritual people have theoretical empathy. They think they empathize. And they empathize mentally. They empathize with the idea of someone else's suffering instead of the suffering itself. If you empathize with the suffering of somebody else, you're going to double over in agony. I mean, it's not pleasant. I've met psychically empathic people, for example, that really break down into tears at the smallest provocation, And these people have empathy, but they don't have an ideal around which to structure their empathy, to support it. An idealist is much stronger in their empathy than somebody who's just passive about it, who just experiences the raw connection. They might not even be compassionate or want to love other people. It's just some opening, or a part of them wants to love and a part of them wants to protect themselves. But the strength of the ideal can be tempting and cause a separation that mentally we interpret as unity and connection. So we're paradoxically maneuvering ourselves to avoid pain. And this is, again, natural. And understanding this, again, is something that doesn't occur in one moment. That's knowledge. Knowledge usually occurs as oh, eureka, there it is, I know it now. All I have to do is remember it. Understanding is a perpetual cycling of digesting the knowledge. So eventually, just like when you work out and at the beginning it's painful because you're not used to it, you begin to restructure on the inside to accommodate the relationship between your ideal and the world. Having an ideal is not enough. You need to establish the relationship between your ideal and the world within which that ideal is found. And you can do that as a sort of meditation, a prayer, an opening. Just keep the idea of relationship in mind, but feel into it. Feel that every time you're encountering somebody in conflict with you about your ideal, that you're actually experiencing the relationship. It might not be a good thing, but couples argue, and there's always friction and this and that until harmony can be attained. Harmony is not our birthright. The ability to create harmony is our birthright. That is an important distinction in my honest opinion. So why should we understand everything then? Understanding, in my opinion, is the relationship between knowledge and where that knowledge is meant to actualize, or, the ideal and its application. That is a very, very challenging thing. And yet at the same time, we can still benefit from the so-called there are natural chemicals in our body called endorphins that are opiates. And these basically minimize the pain when we encounter stressful situations. We need that because we get distracted by this pain. We can't operate. So the ideal also gives you natural endorphins. Oh, look at this great dream, how good and you are uplifted. This is a spiritual endorphin. It's not just a painkiller, it's actually an empowering dynamic. So the ideal can be used to actually bring peace and bring inner balance to you. But knowing at the same time that, well, I'm using this upliftment, this energy, this peace, this whatever, in order to more deeply confront the relationship between my ideal and the world. As this occurs, we begin noticing signs of the connection. Now, you've done that as well. You've noticed these signs that your ideals are actually somehow coming into reflection in the world. And these signs can be personal, between, you meet people and you encounter more information, you see something going on. They can be, of course, at a distance where you observe events in the world that have a relationship with what you're doing. You recognize patterns that are more representative of your understanding and not just more knowledge. And this is another stumbling point because, you can easily treat them as more knowledge and not digest them as part of the ongoing relationship of the interaction and fusion between your ideal and the world. So it's not so much that we need to have common ideals. What we need to do is be in touch with each other where our ideals relate to the world. That bridge, so to speak, is not just a narrow path between our personal ideal and the world. It extends left and right into the ideals of others. Others are trying to connect their ideals in the world as well. And so as long as the basic principles of our ideals, we all have differences in the details of how we think it should come about, but that's before there is actual grounding. And we all often feel disappointment in the grounding process because we're looking back at our ideal too much and expecting the bridge to not even exist. To basically, the other side has to be right smack where the first, where the beginning of the bridge is supposed to be. It's like, no, a bridge is traversing over an abyss that you cannot cross without it. So when you look over the side of the bridge, you're going to see the abyss. It's natural. But the best way to connect with others is by connecting our bridge with their bridge, and our process with their process. I don't expect anybody, or at least most people, to be coherent with my own ideals. It's a perspective based on personal experience, predisposition, all of this. However, as I'm moving from my ideal into a process of communication, I encounter other people's attempts to merge their ideals with the world. Like you and other people on Facebook, this is the arena that the internet provides for us in a certain context. Now, the psychos want to grasp our ideals and destroy them and corrupt them, but they can't. They too have access to the information provided by this bridge area. That's the network of the internet, the network of our same page. It's the bridge. We want to connect our bridges to create a same bridge in order to be able to reinforce our strengths and complement our weaknesses so we can all get across. But as we do this, we need to confront our personal problems with the contrast between our ideal and the world, but also between our ideal and the way it blends with other ideals and over the abyss. I mean, the ideal is not the savior. The individual applying it is actually the savior. So, is understanding all we need then? We all understand and then we can apply it? No. Understanding leads to wisdom. Wisdom is the key to application, but we have often misunderstood wisdom as the capacity of somebody to be on top of the mountain or on top of the pyramid and give orders to everybody else. And that can be an application, but wisdom is not somebody who has knowledge. Wisdom is not somebody who has understanding. It takes understanding to the next level, and that level, there is no how. That's where there is no how. That's where there are some hows, there are some ways to go about it, some options that we may get, but we are charged to understand what these options are. Wisdom is threefold, three-pronged. There are three elements in wisdom. These are the same three elements that are in criminality, paradoxically speaking. Motive, means, and opportunity. A wise person is full of motive. You cannot be wise without, you can be without motive and be understanding, because understanding is a passive thing. You are digesting. You are transforming your inside when you're understanding something. You are making your ideal compatible with the world because you are the intermediary. You are the bridge between your ideal and the world. Wisdom, on the other hand, requires, that's where the energy of passion really comes in. So that's motive. Both criminals and wise people have motive. Means, this is where everybody flounders. Because, well, we have the motive, but we don't have the means. Well, the means are generated through understanding and passion. And the means basically are, you don't stop gaining new information once you understand and once you move toward. Wise people don't stop learning. They constantly learn. So you are open to learn new things. Only this time your learning has a more specialized purpose. You are focused on gathering the means to be able to act. And these may not be apparent. They may not be what you thought they were. However, they serve your passion. That's the key to really understand if the means are your true means. Not if somebody says if it's possible or not, but if it serves your passion. And after that, you have opportunity. Now, the world is full of relationships and full of things. So there's always opportunity, and opportunity often comes in a subtle way. And if you can recognize it through your passion and your knowledge and your understanding, that is basically the means to move into it, and then that is a step toward the next opportunity. Jumping over the chasm of connecting your ideal to the world with a single opportunity is very unlikely to occur because the world is fragmented. That's the whole point. There are disconnections, so you need to jump from stone to stone and create your own progression. the parallel we have between, well, it's not going to happen in a day. Well, usually in nature, things accumulate, and then there's an abrupt change. There's a quantum leap, so to speak. But before that quantum leap happens, there is a progression. And I feel this progression is still happening. My thing is to point that whenever we have a difficulty, let's not just say, oh, there's a reason for it, or, oh, it's all for the best. Well, how is it for the best? How does this serve me? What can I do about it? Where does it fit into my passion, my search for means, my digestion of understanding? Maybe there is no general how or rule, but there are personal pathways of expression and how we go about it. There is creativity. Art is all about how. There is no art without action, without a pattern of action, without sometimes it's a technique, sometimes it's spontaneous and winging it and chaotic, but it's still a how. It's still a process. So this is what we are charged to do. And all my previous videos essentially were forms of, advice, recommendation, my own experience of certain internal resources and things that may help, basically, in order to get to the point to orchestrate our own wisdom. Nobody can give us wisdom. They can help us in our knowledge, they can give us information and knowledge, and they can help us digest our understanding. However, wisdom is something personally acquired. This is true in esoteric paths, and it's true in the practical world. I can't touch you on the forehead or somebody else, or Jesus can't come and say, otherwise it would have happened. The Holy Ghost thing, the whole descent of the Holy Ghost. Now, why, hasn't anybody asked the question, why did the guy have disciples in the first place? Why didn't he just come out into the world and say, okay, 12 random people that the Holy Ghost chooses are now enlightened. They go out into the world. They know everything. They don't have to have 3 years of following me around and watching me get crucified. They can just go, why 12? Let's have 500,000. Let's all enlighten them and make them wise so they can go. In Hebrew, the word for wisdom is chokmah, which means skill. It means the skill and ability to apply something that works. A master. That is what a master is, an artisan. A master is a wise person, and that's why they called all these, master occultists, wizards, sorcerers, shamans. All these words mean wisdom. And that wisdom means a skillful person who walks the talk. Who can, it's not just talking fancy, but the ability to not just walk the talk, but make things with the talk. Create a world of your own ideal with your own hands, with your own words, with everything. There are results with the wise person. By their fruits you shall know them. That's the meaning of it, because the wise, if somebody is really wise, they're going to give you fruits. The fruits may be of understanding, the fruits may be of knowledge, so you say, well, one wise person is not the same as another. One fruit is not the same as another, but it's still a fruit. Some fruits are healthier. Some fruits pack a wallop of nutrition. They make me run like I'm, 18. Other fruits are just filler. They're
Speaking
full
of fruits, I'm just going to interject here. Yesterday, I ate pomegranate for the very first time in my life. It was a new experience. My one granddaughter loved it. My grandson didn't like it, and my other granddaughter couldn't stand it. I mean, she took a little piece. She said, "Oh, it's sour." But it was my first experience at this age of ever eating a pomegranate. So, I mean, I know that's totally not related, but it's fruit.
Well, interestingly enough, the pomegranate is the sacred fruit of the feminine. Because when you cut it, it looks like a feminine organ. That's what the ancients thought. So the energy of the pomegranate somehow is connected to that, according to tradition. But it's also very healthy. So in any case, all of your experiences interconnect. I was reading something, for example. How much time do we have? If I can actually interject this.
I did notice when we stopped our preliminary, I'm going to guess that we have 3 minutes or so left to reach 30 minutes. And that's purely a guess on my part.
Okay. So we're basically coming to wisdom is very difficult. If you can ground motive, means, and opportunity within yourself, with respect to your ideal, if you can ask yourself, well, do I have the passion? And passion isn't just the preliminary passion of my ideal is giving me the passion. No, your sustained passion on the bridge, the passion of one who has understood and has met the challenge. Do I have this passion even with all of these contradictions around me? Can I sustain my motive in the face of hopelessness, for example, or seeming hopelessness, or all of these things? That means I still need to digest more. And my passion drives opportunity and means. So am I still open enough and motivated enough to ask for what I need? And so asking for what you need, for what you truly desire, opens up, the ability to move forward. So working on your wisdom is your own thing, and that's where inner guidance comes in. But opportunities abound. The idea is to choose the right one for you. Just because it's an opportunity, the bus passes. Get on the bus, or else, you're going to have to wait. Well, that bus may take you to a totally different place than you want to go. So don't freak out about missing the bus or missing the train or crap like that. Trains are all over the place, and so are buses. The idea is to get on the right one for you, and to get off if it's not right. It's okay. You're not a betrayer, and all of this. Just because today you believe in one path doesn't mean, and somebody says, well, that's bullshit. Well, if then I'll take up the challenge to see if it's bullshit. Does it really meet the criteria? Am I really sure? Are my doubts enough to keep my passion going? Are they going to inhibit my passion? Otherwise, at some point, you've gotten off several buses. You were in
Aristo was one of them.
Even fundamentalism was a bus. That was the bus they put you on without your consent. But it still took you places. You got off that bus, you got on Rusa, you got off that bus, you moved into these other ones. But the point is that it doesn't matter. Each bus still takes you along because you're building your wisdom along the way, and in the end you learn how to drive your own bus, your car at least, and to be able to bring others with you, not just to follow you, but to understand that we are supporting each other, even though we may not seem on the same page. So it's okay to say, I don't know, relatively speaking. I don't know if that person is a thief or whatever, but something is suspicious to me, but at the same time, it's hopeful. So we can bring these contradictions. We can freak out because all of this is part of the healing we've also talked about. We are paving our bridges. We are healing our fragmentation. All of these come together. What I wanted to add to this was something I read, I was reading about taking something with a grain of salt and where that came from. And essentially it's a Roman saying, but salt was a metaphysical element in ancient times. It was also the first form of money. That's how they paid soldiers in the Roman Empire, with bags of salt. That's how all ancient cultures, because, it had so many uses, it was useful money. And it was very difficult to get. It's not like today where you have industrial methods and all of that. You had to scrape the damn rocks at the seashore to get just a little bit. So salt was traded for money, but a grain of salt would alter the texture of food. It could make sweets sweeter. It killed germs. It absorbed the moisture from food in your mouth, and it could eliminate poisons when added to certain herbs. Some Roman emperor, basically, they gave him 72 herbs and said, well, you're poisoned, drink this concoction. And he goes, that's damn disgusting. Well, then take it with a grain of salt. Because the salt is going to catalyze everything and basically give structure to all of the chaos, all of your doubt, all of the water within the system. At the same time, Jesus said, ye are the salt of the earth. And that means you are the value. You are the money. The salt of the earth, the light of the world, etc. But if salt doesn't have saltiness, if it's numb, if it's dull, if it's dead, basically if it's dull, what's going to salt the salt? You can't. So your job is to keep up your saltiness, your nature of being able to absorb the contradictions of the world and establish a coherent structure. To not give the microbes of doubt or psychopathy or disinformation a chance to grow because you've absorbed them and your ideal provides the foundation. The ideal is true, but it can become corrupted. This is where I disagree with Karen Hudes on a fundamental level. These psychopaths are not corrupt. The system is not corrupt. When the system is designed by psychopaths, it doesn't become corrupt. It's criminally intended to be this way. Underneath this system, there is the intent of the people, and we can extract our truth from it. In that sense, I don't believe, I believe there is a practicality in the sense of negotiating and not being vengeful and all of this. But at the same time, lawyers are notorious for making deals. And they're notorious for basically plea bargaining in every case. I believe that if we are strong enough, there is a line that's been drawn. It's not a matter of, okay, well, are you going to sacrifice? These people are going to, if they have the power to screw society that much, then our job is to actually diminish that power instead of seeking to get rid of them. If they're so bad that if we make a move and don't give them what they want, at least a little bit, and negotiate, negotiate with terrorists, so to speak, then we're not powerful enough. And as we become powerful enough, they can't act. Look at how many promises of, not just the promises of good things happening, but this is a very, very good thing, of the stalemate. There are so many promises of disasters occurring. And all of these things that were supposed to happen that were bad. But if you really read the literature, these people were planning nasty shit since the 90s and 80s. I read that we were supposed to have chips in our heads by the year 2000 at least. And they don't make these things, they don't really talk about these things, how much they have failed along the way. They just think that they can keep pushing the plan indefinitely and wearing us down slowly. But we have become strong enough to establish a kind of Mexican standoff that they don't want us to know really exists. I see a Mexican standoff, and that's a good thing. Compared to the Alamo, it's a good thing. And from a Mexican standoff, we can move to start gaining more power. It's not about disempowering them. This is the wealth. In all traditions, wealth is empowerment, wisdom. And that's the money. The money that is kept in trust. Ferdinand Marcos was a dictator. I don't care if he was royalty or whatever. He stole that money. All of the gold that's kept in trusts, most of it is stolen because some royalty has built it on the backs of the people. You can say the following, and I'm extending this a little, and I'll stop after this little parable. You have the parable of the prodigal child you mentioned so much. The prodigal child left his father's house with a bag of treasure. He took money with him. He didn't just leave. He wasn't stupid. But along the way, he got robbed. And, he got thrown into pig pen, or he gambled it away and all of this. But he got robbed for the most part because he was naive. And he thought his father was the problem. His father betrayed him because his father is the ideal, and he couldn't bring the ideal into the world. He brought what he could, and he lost it. So then we go to the robbers finally, and the father's power comes into the son and all of this, and he goes down to the world to get his money back. He confronts the thieves, and we were just holding it in trust for you. And it's true. That's the result. He probably would have squandered it anyway, but it wasn't their motive. It doesn't matter what our motive was. Yes, it was, because if I hadn't done what I needed to do, then you would have screwed me. I wouldn't have any chance. Their motive is to destroy the world. Their motive is to take that money for themselves. They could have just worked together and given it, but they don't want to. Negotiations cannot be done with somebody who wants to screw you every step of the way. A Machiavellian negotiation is where somebody has a knife behind their back, and as soon as you turn your back, that's not about revenge, and it's about pragmatism and being careful and knowing that the criminal also has the three elements of wisdom. Motive, means, and opportunity. You have to keep them from the opportunity. You have to learn to diminish their means, and you have to watch out for their motive. And that's part of the process as well. So I hope this message wasn't too long or boring. I'll end it here.
Well, it probably I'm going to guess it went about 37 minutes or so. But again, I don't remember exactly the time we started the part that's going to be publicly aired.
Losing it. Yeah,
Thank you, Aristo. Have a great
week. Thank you for having me. You too.
Namaste.
Namaste.